Hello and welcome back to another first look of a cool sci-fi game yet to be released, and today we're looking at Starminer, a unique approach to the sandbox space sim genre, combining deep tactical and creative gameplay with stunning visuals. What is this game all about? What is your goal and what can you expect from its gameplay? Starminer lets you live out your crafting fantasies in space, where you have to build an empire of mining ships and stations. Described by developer Cool and Good Games as a space industry and logistics simulation, you'll be spending most of your time mining, building and strategizing on expansion. All these activities seem to have a lot of depth to them, and a lot of work has gone into making everything as realistic as possible with fully simulated physics and using the latest rendering technologies, thanks to the Unreal Engine, to make it look the part. I've been following this game for quite a while now, from the time it was still known by the title ILL Space, which was changed into Starminer late last year. At the same time, Cool and Good Games announced they would be partnering with Paradox Arc, a part of Paradox Interactive. And by the way, Cool and Good Games isn't a 100 or even 50-man studio, no, it's just two guys. And looking at this game, that's not what you'd expect from either the look and feel or the depth of the main mechanics, because aside from the really good looking graphics, the gameplay loop consists of mining, building more ships and stations, and expanding your mining empire to other sectors. However, it's not all peace and quiet, because there will also be combat involved, but more on that later. In being a sandbox game, you get a lot of freedom in your approach, but this also requires you to make certain decisions. Do you build a large fleet or one huge station? To what parts of space do you expand? Will your expansion be aggressive or slow but steady? So how does it all work? Now for that, let's take a closer look at the gameplay, starting with, what else? Mining. This is obviously a core mechanic and comes to life through a realistic looking procedure, where a lot of games will require you to lock onto or target an asteroid and then just activate an ability or mining lasers. Starminer takes it up a notch by giving you full control over these otherwise simplified steps. This seems really interesting because even though the concept of mining in space has been around in games for decades, think of EVE Online or No Man's Sky, none of them seem to have the depth and focus on it as this title does. Starminer goes quite the distance into making space mining a true experience, because an asteroid field will contain different resources. There are 6 different resources at this time: iron, silicon, cobalt, thorium, water and ionite, which basically enables space travel. Resources require specialized mining modules in order to effectively mine them, but first they need to be identified. In order to do this, you need to get close enough to an asteroid to scan it. Scanners need to be pointed directly at the rock in order to work, and so you need to maneuver and find the right angle. Then not only do you know what resource is there, you now also know what parts of the asteroid lend themselves best for mining, because the better your relative positioning between your ship and the asteroid, the faster you will be able to collect resources. After you've done all of this, mining lasers are then activated to start the extraction process. But what's next is another example of how much more deeper this mechanic goes when compared to other games. Because now, haulers first need to pick up chunks of mined ore and return it to the station, which is reminiscent of typical RTS games with workers or farmers, where not only you have to assign them to the task of collecting food or wood, they also have to carry it back to storage. Now after this is done, refinery modules will convert these chunks into usable materials. So as we can see, the resource gathering part of this game is quite extensive. It makes me wonder if this process can also be automated, given the fact that you can build multiple ships and stations across different sectors. What happens if I have 5 stations at 5 different planets? Do I have to micromanage all of them? I'm sure there must be some way the entire operation keeps going without you having to set up and follow through on every mining operation taking place. But let's not forget that flying up to the asteroid can also be done manually, making use of the game's realistic feature called Pilot Mode. As you might have noticed, Starminer has a high level of detail and realism to it, and how you navigate your ships is no different. This is done with your main and retro thrusters. Now this isn't a simple push of a button type of system, actual Newtonian physics are included, meaning you have to take into account the mass of your ships, and find the right balance between thrust, trajectory and velocity. This means you have to install a thruster module capable for the job at hand. They can be handled by your ship's flight computer, but as we just saw with mining, you can take full control and do all of the flying yourself. Since we're talking about ship modules anyways, another core mechanic is the entire design process of your ships and stations. You start off with a single hub ship, mining your first resources, and then you can start expanding that ship with a common game mechanic as adding modules and attachments. Small engineering vessels known as constructors will transport the required resources to the build location to assemble the modules. But where most games have a single preset location on a design where something will be added, Starminer is once again giving you a lot of freedom in your designs through the use of Hulk nodes. Hulk nodes are modular units that allow up to 14 different expansions, enabling you to choose where to attach modules such as solar panels, habitation modules, or engineering and mining facilities. This also means you can build ships or stations to fit a certain role, having a focus on mining, energy production, or combat, for example. Because the more you expand and intensify your operations, so does your heat signature, and at some point you will get noticed by aliens. They want the resources for themselves or simply don't want us to have them. Either way, you need to manage your defenses whilst you are expanding. You can build different defense modules to deal with different threats, but you can also produce warships who will defend your operation. More details on how combat works have yet to be released, but if you are not a fan of it, there are options available for a more peaceful approach. Different game modes will be available, such as career mode, where you can mine, design and build away at your own pace, and only when you choose to do so, expand outwards towards a sector where combat can occur. In sandbox mode, you'll have the option to set various parameters such as turning enemies on and off, and change their difficulty level. In terms of replayability, this game seems to have that covered because of it being a sandbox experience where you have full control over your design, so each run can be very different. How strongly the game incentivizes you to come back because of the gameplay itself, how appealing the mechanics are, is something we'll have to find out at launch, and I will of course update you on that as soon as possible. At first glance, the game looks absolutely amazing with fully realized 3D environments, detailed models and realistic looking effects. Now this might just be one of those games where you get half the fun out of looking at all the visual splendor on your screen. It seems to have really solid systems in place to keep you occupied for hours, setting up an efficient mining operation first, then scaling up and at some point get ready to defend yourself against attackers, but also to explore out into the universe at different locations and under different circumstances. And so far this game has a Steam following of around 15,000 people, but I'm sure that if the game turns out to be a solid experience in gameplay, that more people will start flocking to this title because it seems to have a lot of potential. I can't say I've seen a game like this before, at least not with this amount of detail going into mining and building entire mining stations in orbit, even more so in a sandbox game. I'm sure there will be a lot of people instantly attracted to designing all sorts of elaborate shaped stations, trying to fine-tune them for efficiency, and this game seems to offer lots of options there as well, especially having to take into account actual physics. That's all for now. Leave a comment to let me know what you think of Starminer, and if you've enjoyed this video, click like to support it. This is also the perfect time to subscribe, because I will follow up on Starminer and other great sci-fi gaming content, so don't forget to turn on your notifications. As always, thanks for tuning in and see you in the next one.